Still we are the voice in the desert crying, prepare ye the way of the Lord. Holding arms, riding on clouds, shining like the sun. At the trumpet call, lift your voice, sing it up jingling, out of Zion's hill salvation.
Okay, in Genesis 35, verse 16, we find a story about the death of Jacob's wife, Rachel. And we see that her death came as she was giving birth. And out of her pain, just before she dies, she begins to speak, and she names her son. And she calls him Ben-Oni. And it means the son of my sorrow. You know, this was a name that he would have carried around for the rest of his life. And I'm sure every time his family and friends would see him and say his name, they would be reminded of that awful day when his mother died. But that was the day that he was born. So he would have been marked by this name. His dad, Jacob, though, had other ideas. And he gives him the name, which was a name of privilege. And it was a position of power, because he called him Benjamin. And it means the son of my right hand. And we know that the right hand was the hand of power. And it speaks of authority and strength. And we know that the right hand was also a place of favor and honor. So Jacob gave him this name. We know that Jacob's sons, they would grow to be the leaders of the tribes of Israel. And Benjamin's tribe would go on throughout all generations to be known as excellent fighting men. They were warriors. They were often the ones that would go first and lead the children of Israel into battle. They were the sons of Benjamin, the sons of the right hand. This wasn't just a title that was given to them, though. It was literal. The men of Benjamin were predominantly right-handed. So that anyone that wasn't right-handed, born in this tribe, would have been standing out as very, very different. They might even been looked down upon. And that brings us to what I want us to look at today. If you've got your Bibles, we're going to look at the book of Judges, chapter 3, and we're going to start at verse 12. And it says, "And the children of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Lord strengthened Eglon, king of Moab, against Israel, because they had done evil in the sight of him. Then he gathered to himself the people of Ammon and Amalek, and he went and defeated Israel, and they took possession of the city of palms. So the children of Israel, they ended up serving this king called Eglon, king of Moab, for 18 years. But the children of Israel cried out to the Lord, and the Lord raised up a deliverer for them. And his name was Ehud, the son of Gera, the Benjamite. And it says, a left-handed man." I believe it's in there because it was very different. He was left-handed. It says, "By him the children of Israel sent tribute to Eglon, king of Moab. Now Ehud made himself a dagger. It was a double-edged and a cubit in length. And he fastened it under his clothes on his right thigh. So he brought the tribute to Eglon, king of Moab." And now it says this, and it says, "Now Eglon was very fat." He was a very fat man. "And when Ehud had finished presenting the tribute, he sent away the people who had carried the tribute. But he himself turned back from the stone images that were at Gilgal and said, 'I have a secret message for you.' He said, 'Keep silence,' and all who attended him went out from him. So Ehud came to him. He was sitting upstairs in his cool private chamber. Then Ehud said, 'I have a message from God for you.' So he arose from his seat. Then Ehud reached with his left hand, he took the dagger from his right thigh and he thrust it into his belly. Even the hilt went in after the blade, and the fat closed over the blade, for he did not draw the dagger out of his belly, and his entrails came out. I'm sorry for that bit. I know you got your dinner in a bit. But then Ehud went out through the porch, and he shut the doors to the upper room behind him and locked them, and he escapes. Verse 27, and it happened when he arrived back at the camp that he blew the trumpet in the mountains of Ephraim, and the children of Israel went down with him from the mountains, and he led them. Then he said to them, follow me, for the Lord has delivered your enemies, the Moabites, into your hand. So they went down after him, seized the fords of the Jordan leading to Moab, and did not allow anyone to cross over. And at that time they killed about 10,000 men, all stout men of valor. Not a man escaped. And it says, so Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Israel, and the land was at rest for 80 years. This sermon today is brought to you by Weight Watchers. Ehud was a left-handed man from the tribe of Benjamin, the son of the right hand. And because he was left-handed, he was very, very different. He would have been a man who probably didn't fit in with everybody else, as they were all right-handed. But we see he makes his sword, he puts it on his right thigh, and I'm sure probably Eglon's guards didn't even think to look on the right thigh, because as they were all right-handed, the swords would be on the left thigh. Everyone would have walked into the room with the weapon in a certain place. The guards probably would have seen them. They would have probably removed them. The last thing they would have thought was that there was going to be a sword where it was. So this man who was left-handed, it became an advantage to him. He gains the trust of the king. He approaches him. He reaches for the sword and he stabs him. He kills him. It says after this, he leaves Eglon, he escapes, he rallies all the children of Israel around him. And 18 years they had been in captivity to this man. But now, because of this action on that day, they find peace for 80 years. We could say he was an unexpected hero. He was so overlooked by Eglon and his men that he was trusted to be alone with him. In other words, they didn't see him as a threat at all. As I read this recently, I thought, I wonder how the enemy sees us. Maybe he looks at us, and because of his activity, he doesn't see us as a threat. Maybe he looks at us and he sees us as weak. Maybe he sees us as less than others. Perhaps he's beat up on us so long and he's kept us captive that he just considers us a defeated foe. But I want to encourage us today that just because he might see us in a certain way, it doesn't make that the truth. The truth of the matter is that unbeknownst to the enemy, we may be just left-handed in a spiritual sense. Maybe we're just uniquely prepared by God to win an unexpected victory. I want us to see today that our limitations never limit God. Some of us might hide away because we don't think that we're qualified. Maybe we hide away because we don't think we're strong enough. Maybe we look around and we see others are far more gifted than us. But I want to remind us today that God has got a role for each one of us. Maybe some of us, we feel awkward. We don't feel like we're normal. We don't feel like we fit in with everyone else. And we might feel like a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. I want to encourage you with this today. Let's stop trying to fit in, because I don't believe we're supposed to fit in, because we're born to stand out. We might be feeling out of place, but maybe we're not in the season or the place yet where God reveals why he made us the way that we are, why we've gone through the things that we've gone through. Maybe what we have seen in ourselves and what others have seen as brokenness and weakness and failure is really just a means for God to use us to do great things. When we look through the scriptures, we see so many Bible characters who were weak, who had limitations. You know, Moses, he said he couldn't speak. He had a stutter. But God raised him up to lead multitudes out of captivity in Egypt. You know, Gideon, he was just a young man, full of fear, hiding away. But again, God used him and raised him up to deliver his people. Again, David was small, a shepherd boy. He was so unimportant when the prophet came to meet his family. He didn't even get invited to the party. His family didn't see anything good in him. But God saw him. God saw his heart and made him king. You know, Jesus was from Nazareth, and it was said that can anything good come from Nazareth? When we look at most of the disciples, they were uneducated young men, but they go on to be talked about as having turned the world upside down. I'm sure when educated people of the day looked at them, they would just think, who are they? But the difference was they had been with Jesus, and they accomplished great and unexpected things. Many of these people wrote themselves off. For some others wrote them off. Ehud, the left-handed one, probably overlooked. What an unexpected hero. He wins one victory, but he's able to rally the entire nation of Israel around him. And from 18 years of captivity, in that one day, they begin the first day of 80 years of peace. You know, one victory can inspire others to join the fight. Today, we might be unlikely ones, unexpected ones. But for people like us, when God uses us, I believe it will encourage others to join the fight. You know, who wins if we win? Who wins? Who would get victory if they see us walking in victory? Who would believe they could be free from drugs and alcohol if we would get free from our addictions? Who could win over their depression and their worry and their fear and their sickness if we in our left-handedness would rise up and overcome? I want us to think about this morning. We could be the key to so many others finding freedom and breaking free. We could be the key as we throw off our chains for many others throwing off their chains and living in peace. Our win could be the start of so many others walking in freedom and victory, saved, healed, and delivered. Isn't that what we want today? I don't know how we see ourselves today, but God sees us as his children. He sees us as special people, called out people, people who have a purpose, people born for purpose. I pray today that God will open our eyes to see who we really are. Just think, one victory changed. It was one victory for one man, but he changed the whole identity of the nation from captives to free men and women. And I pray God would do the same with us today.
There is no God like Jehovah. There is no God like Jehovah. There is no God like Jehovah.